Well, cool. Hey, Adam, it's great to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, sir. So before we get into your work, I want to know first and foremost, with this pandemic 5 years ago, it was already the effects were really sinking in. But ultimately, how did you survive that era, and how has it influenced the way that you do things now?
Yeah, well, if yeah, so I'm located in the South in Greenville, South Carolina, and I joke, some people may not find this funny. I do. The pandemic really didn't happen here.
Yeah.
Um, but I was a business owner. I owned an agency. I sold it in 2023. So, March 2020, my son and I actually flew back from Africa, I think on March 9th, and the world shut down on March 13th, which is my
Wow.
wife's birthday, is one reason why I can remember that.
Yeah.
And so as a business owner, it was scary, right? It was what's going to happen. Our clients were universities. We niched to do brand and marketing for universities. So what were they going to do? How are they going to keep the doors open? So I really, I know a lot of people had identity crisis. I had a little bit more like business crisis and had to go into crisis mode around that.
Yeah. So let's get into exactly what you do for a living right now. And kids always get the truth out of us. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. It's career day. The kid in the back of the room that's always curious is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer him?
Yeah, well, I would tell them that in about 30 years, they're going to find themselves in what we call midlife, and it's a very disorienting and weird time. And men in particular are trying to figure out they're making the shift from the first half to the second half. So I'm doing an awful job for a 12-year-old. But what I help men live fully alive in the second half of their life. They the focus shifts from like success and achieving to purpose and meaning. So I help them figure out that shift and how to live a successful second half.
I think a lot of younger boys would probably understand that looking at the men around them. They would have to be like, I just have this feeling around them that there's something changing because it
Yeah.
just has to be seismic. You have to be able to feel it if you're young. Um, So speaking of youth, let's stay in that time capsule.
All
What
right.
did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were 12 years old, what was your dream job?
Well, I was tall for my age, still tall for my age, but so I always thought, NBA was the thing, and I'm from Indiana, so basketball was in the blood, but I soon found out that that wasn't gonna happen. I think I didn't have anything in particular, though I can tell you my dad was a physician, and he was frustrated with the fact that when he went on vacation, the income stopped. And so he always said to me, he said, Adam, do something where you keep making money when you're not working. And so that planted the seed in me to be an entrepreneur. And so I always knew I wanted to do my own thing. I wasn't a super fan of having a boss and stuff like that. And so that's what I did. I founded the agency, and I loved it. It was great. It was great for my first half, but it was not going to be the thing I was going to do in my second half.
So who's been a hero? Who's been that kind of inspirational force to find your footing and who you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I love again, this is controversial. I don't love this person for all the things that he does. He's not very lovable right now, but I am pretty impressed with Elon Musk. And the reason I am is because he thinks big. He does what he says he's going to do, and he's all in. So there are aspects of him that I admire. There are aspects of him that I don't that I don't admire. But he's very purpose driven, very intentional, and wants to make a big impact. And I don't think I always tell people, you don't have to change the world, Steve Jobs, make a dent in the universe, do all that. Like, but change your world, like impact your world, and that might be your family, your community, your city, your state, your region. um But I think again in our second half, we just have this feeling of, hey, I want to make more of an impact. How can I help people? So Elon Musk on a world stage, extraordinary visionary, and I just want to take that down to a practical level and do what I can do and help other men do what they can do.
As an entrepreneur, there's risk. There's lots of risks that you have to take. When you look at your entrepreneurial journey, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Yeah, well, so I worked with an agency consultant, and this advice always stuck with me, Joe. That he said, you're not going to build wealth selling your agency. You're going to build wealth selling the building that your agency owns. And so in 2015, I bought a 20,000 square foot building in downtown Greenville, and I signed a mortgage that if I hope the bank is not listening, but there's no way I would cover that note if the bank called it. And that was scary. That was some sleepless nights of like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? But 10 years later, that was one of the greatest investments I've ever made and one of the biggest risks I've ever taken.
So, talk to me a little bit about midlife. Like, when do you get to a point as a professional? Because there's a lot of people that get into regular jobs, work in their existence. They find something they like, but then they start feeling things at certain ages. When is it? When is the key time that people feel this shift? And what's the best thing for people to do? What should they do if they aren't quite sure how to throttle into that second half and find purpose in their lives?
Yeah. Okay. And so I'll lay it out, and I'd be interested to know what you think and if you've experienced any of this. But I think it starts around 40 that you start to notice something a little bit different, right? And it takes, at least in my experience, and men that I coach, it takes a couple years for that to sort of settle in, maybe some dissonance or some discontent, and going, what used to do it for me isn't doing it for me anymore. I think maybe some health issues start cropping up. You can't, like for me, I noticed that I went from a 7:30 mile to an 8:30 mile. I'm like, how did I lose a minute? Like, what happened? So you just start noticing you can't do things. I actually had a rash of injuries where I lost my left meniscus and then my right. I did broke and dislocated a shoulder, tore my bicep skiing, all within like 3 years. I'm
Wow.
like, okay, Adam, you're not 18. You're not, wake up. You're not 18 anymore. So, so I think around 45, that sort of sets in, and you go, I need to change things up. It takes a couple more years, to, maybe identify your purpose, work on that, change it up. So it is that midlife is a thing. We like to joke about the midlife crisis, and some people do. They blow up their lives. They like think that making radical change is going to change everything. That usually is pretty disappointing. So a methodical way that you just start saying, "Hey, what am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing?" And you can actually answer that question. So I don't. So that's like an average.
Yeah.
I think some people it happens earlier. Some people it happens in the 50s. For me, I think I was a sort of a typical case where it happened in the 40s. Like, so how about you? Did any of that resonate with?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember, I think there was some flashpoints where I saw people around me that were really doing unhealthy things, not exercising, not eating well, vitamins, all of those things. And I thought there's gonna come a point in your life where you're not gonna have a reset, a rewind button. We aren't
Yeah,
VHS tapes walking around, right?
right.
We're active, real-time people that have to be cognizant because all of those little things add up over time. I
Yes.
think that's the thing about age is that you realize when you're young, you want it to happen like that. Fast, let's do it. Let's get there. Let's go. And I think as you get older, you realize that it's more of the sap going down the tree. And along the way, it accumulates all these things you do every day. Every day you work out. Every day you take your vitamins. Every day you decide that you don't want that one thing you shouldn't eat. Every
Yeah.
day that you decide that you want to do something professionally for you versus some anonymous company that's not going to honor what your work is. It's not going to be attached to you. I think it's all of those existential moments that add up to you realizing that the sun's no longer rising on your life. It's starting to slowly
Yeah.
go down, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of this accumulation of like a Tetris board.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great, some of your choices came up and I was thinking like, you start hearing the clock tick.
Yeah.
Like you said, the sun set. So you start to get a little bit more particular and choosy with what you're going to do because you realize you don't have forever anymore. Like when we were young, we just thought it was forever.
Yep.
And so like, hey, are you going to do what you really want to do? That's what I help men figure out because I know that's the question that is starting to pop up. And the biggest question I think that most men could relate with this, and women relate with this too. I'm just choosing primarily to work with men, is is there is this all there is? Is
Right.
this all there is? Like
Uh-huh.
the people I work with are typically successful.
Yeah.
They've had a successful career. The first half was great. Like it was good. They just don't want they want to do something different. They want to do something for them, for their
Yep.
soul.
Yep.
Just like you said, you summed it up quite well.
Well, thank you. And I think kids too, it's a big deal. My son's on the spectrum, so I'm going to live as absolutely long as I can. And I realize the only way that I'm going to be able to do that is by doing things that logically will take care of you biologically and psychologically. There's so many things that go into that, you know. So, and I
Yeah.
think too, it's like people always talk about, yeah, when I retire, that's it. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit around and do whatever like that frightens me. Like I'm a busybody, so I love doing things. So the idea of like going into a retirement space where I do nothing isn't something that appeals to me. I just want to keep, I just there's so many things in this life that I want to do, and I just got to keep going.
Yeah, I think there's that trend too, that retirement is no longer the idea of moving to the beach and it is I want to be active, health is wealth. I want to do something that I enjoy doing. And so a lot of what I'm doing is around encore careers. Is like, I don't necessarily need to make what I was making in my heyday, but I still want to make a good living and help people and I enjoy it. So that's the new retirement, I feel like.
Absolutely. And I think another part of males, because we always bury all of this stuff. It's like that Bill Burr comedy skit where we're like we just smash all of it down and then all of a sudden it kind of roars, which is why the mortality for men is a little different than women. But I think too, when you look at your life, the balance, the philosophical balance between work and family and your soul. How have you approached that in your life? Is that throttled and become different midlife? Have you always had an overall philosophy of taking care of all of these things in a Libratic scale? How has that worked for you?
Man, I don't know where it came from, but I feel very fortunate that the idea of having margin in life was ingrained in me early. Now my wife and I have 4 kids, and so I recognize that there are seasons where you have less margin than more margin. So, like for instance, one thing that we did, and this we decided that for our household, we would stay rec. We weren't going to do travel ball, right? And we saw so many friends like put their kids in travel ball, and then you like sacrifice your life to weird cities and hotels and to go follow your kid around to play baseball or whatever. We're like, we're not doing it. So that's an example of um where we had margin and just and kept sane. So balance has been good, but I also recognize there are seasons. I was an entrepreneur, and you know what? Some weeks were all work. I mean, wide open, late nights. Some weeks, but I'd also take 6 weeks of vacation, 6+ weeks of vacation a year because I own my own business. So
Yeah.
I've always been sort of like, some seasons life will demand more of you, sometimes, and sometimes it won't. But keep the margin. That's key.
So let me ask you this. Let's say you walk into a room full of all of your clients and everybody that knows you in a professional business sense. You swim
Hmm.
through that group of people and go up to a podium, and you can tell them one fun story about you. Jumping out of an airplane, wrestling a crocodile, outrunning a bear, just a really cool first concert you went to, best sports experience you had. What would you tell that room of people?
Ah, man, that's a great question. What would I tell about the best experience? Well, here's okay. I'll do this, and it sort of goes back to your COVID thing. Um, the best experience I ever did was to go on a month sabbatical. And I got permission from my wife. Yes, I have the best wife ever. But I told her I was thinking about I'm going to go to Colorado for a month, and she said yes, like you need it. So one thing my wife and I do is we look out for each other, and when we see when one or the other's in trouble, we're like, hey, you need to go on a girls trip, or you need to go on a guys trip, or something like that. So she's like, go. So long story, I'll try to make this short, but long story short is I ended up in Utah because we're part of this service called Trusted House Sitters, where someone comes and watches your pets while you're on vacation.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's and it's free. So you don't have to send the dog to the kennel.
That's
It's someone
cool.
has been, it's awesome. So I said, why don't I do that instead of spending $10,000 doing Airbnbs? So I got this $1 million house outside of Park City, and I watched these two little dogs. And while I was out there, I wrote a book.
Wow.
It's called the Life That Matters Manifesto. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. This book just poured out of me. So this whole idea of how do you live a life that matters, and there's 11 principles, and it just like I just kept writing. I wrote it in 2.5 weeks. It took me 3 years to edit, but I wrote it in 2.5 weeks. I
Wow.
ran a 7 mile mountain trail race while I was out there. Utah was a completely different culture.
Yep.
It was amazing. So what I would encourage that group is like take time for yourself.
Yep.
Give, and if give someone else permission to take time for themselves. Like this, it was one of the greatest gifts I received from my wife. And it was one of the greatest gifts I really I gave to myself. And what I'm 4 years out, so I think it's about time for another sabbatical.
That's
And
it.
I'm thinking Portugal this time.
That's cool, man. What a great story. You know, what's interesting about what you're saying there is that I think there's a lot of people that don't write books. There's a lot of people that don't take those opportunities. And I think that's essential, A. And B, what I'm realizing in midlife is I wish there was a better database online for us to exchange services like taking care of animals. Like,
Mm,
I really need trees trimmed in my yard, and it's so expensive to trim trees, but I'm really good in IT and other things and being creative, and I'm a painter. Like, I would
yeah,
gladly make a wonderful painting or fix somebody's computers, fix their Wi-Fi if they would just come trim my trees. Same thing with what you're talking about with the animals. If we could come together and acknowledge all of our skills that we have and do kind of that exchange, not all
yeah,
the time, we have to make money, right? But if there was some of those things that we could do, I think we would have a level of harmony and empathy and compassion for each other that would be very humane.
yeah. Like take care of each other as we get old, right?
That's it. That's what I'm talking about. That midlife thing. So let me ask you this. If everything that you've done and accomplished and more importantly evolved to in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Yeah, well, I have a pretty stellar family. And there's this concept I recently someone shared with me about we spend a lot of our time life building valuable things, right? But there are things in our life that are priceless, and those are the things you can't buy, you can't get back. So again, your health, your relationships, your family. So I mean, I'm proud. I have four incredible kids. My wife is absolutely amazing. We'll be 28 years this year, and the business and what we do supports the priceless things, and just don't get those confused.
Yeah.
Don't get those confused. So yeah.
So Adam, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you gets your book, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, well, I mean, I think what that's Joe. You got some people who can't answer these questions. Um,
You're a pro though. You're like pivoting. You're a true entrepreneur. It's like you're asked to do a dance on Dancing with the Stars and you got 5 stars.
of just running out there. All right, do my well. So who do I think I am? I mean, I think I am a very I know who I am. I'm a very healthy challenger to those in my life.
Yeah.
Um, People like me because I could. There's a guy named Jamie Mullican who would say, you know, Adam, I remember where we were. We're actually at Park City. We're sitting at a bar having a beer, and I challenged him to go do the thing that he loved, and he went and did it, and he is over the moon that he's doing that. Um, and so some people I wear out because I challenge a lot. But the lovingly thing is where and as I get older, I've found that balance. And so yeah,
I love
I'm
that.
a lovingly challenger. Yeah.
There's a very interesting cat that I've interviewed a few times that told me every year he does one thing that he feels like is almost impossible, like
Mm,
running a marathon, like um, not eating for like a month or just having water, just like things that you just wouldn't think. And I
yeah.
think that we need those people around us to be like, do it, go for it, just do it. What
Yeah.
what's it's the Mark Twain quote, don't you don't want to regret what you didn't do, that's it because you have a choice.
Yeah, you do. And that's I love that. There's another quote by a famous sculptor, and I'll forget his name, but he says, and whatever you do, make sure it's impossible,
Yeah,
is what the paraphrase is. And I think Henry Moore, is it Henry Moore? Anyway, um yeah, and I love that idea of yearly, or maybe every other year, do something impossible.
yeah,
Like go for it. That's living. I also saw the Ian Fleming, his quote about double oh 007 author, but his quote is like if you ever have an adventure, say yes. Basically, what else? What are you doing?
yeah.
Like
What else are you gonna do?
what else are you gonna do? Go on the adventure.
That's it. Absolutely. So if anybody wants to pick up a copy of the Life That Matters Manifesto, they want to hire you, they want sage advice, questions, any other good business, where do they go?
They can do all that at madetomatter.coach. And they can also follow Adam Landrum, me on LinkedIn is where I usually am.
Right on. Adam, this is great. I love your energy. I love what you're doing. Thank you, sir.
Great.
It's great to kind of connect and talk about midlife because I'm starting to notice it more and more lately. Like I really enjoy what's going on down here, and it's going to come to a close. And it's that existential moment where
Yeah.
you're like looking at the curtain going down, and like, can we just stop for a minute? Let me just have a minute to process. And it moves fast, man, especially when you have
It moves
kids.
it moves fast. It doesn't have to be scary. And
Right.
I'll just tell people it can be wonderful on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. I totally get it. Absolutely. Adam, it's been great, man. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. Likewise.
Thank you. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.